I was sorry to hear a number of those situations with that testifier, and I think probably some friends. They need some friends there. They need some church. They need some God in their life, or even ice cream or tea.
Welcome to Searchlight Report, a podcast from South Dakota Searchlight. I'm Megan O'Brien, and our new podcast will keep you up to date on politics and policy in the Mount Rushmore state. This week, we're looking at hemp and kratom regulation, an ethics bill inspired by Searchlight's reporting, and a disagreement about committee seating assignments that had accusations slinging around the state capitol. But first, the audio you just heard was John Carley, a Republican senator from Piedmont. He's sponsoring a bill this legislative session that would ban the possession, sale, or use of intoxicating hemp-derived products unless it's through a licensed medical marijuana dispensary. Hemp products can be altered or distilled to play up the effects of THC. That's the intoxicating compound found in greater amounts in marijuana. THC seltzers have hit the shelves in grocery stores, liquor stores, and bars. During a public comment discussion period, people showed up to voice both support and opposition.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Steve Siegel, and I'm the registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Trial Lawyers Association. And this morning, we've heard a lot of things about how dangerous these recreational hemp products are. I want to talk a little bit about some of my friends this morning. I've had 4 friends drink themselves to death, 4 of them. One was 25. One was a lawyer up in Aberdeen who was a very close friend of mine. When he turned 46, his doctor said, "Richie, you better quit drinking or you're going to die. You're killing yourself." You know what he said? "I'm not going to quit drinking. I like drinking. I can't quit. I'm not going to." Guess what happened? 2 years later, he was dead, right? It's a really good alternative to alcohol and narcotic pain medication. Senator Carley talked about the THC-infused drinks. I want to just touch on those quickly. As Sam Matson said yesterday, the AG had a bill that makes it 21. Absolutely. It makes all the sense in the world. It should be 21. These drinks should be regulated. But they're selling like wildfire. They're a really good alternative. I'm told that recovering alcoholics are drinking these drinks. They allow these people to sleep. And that's what we hear, that a lot of these people are elderly that are just looking for a sleep aid. They're not looking to get high. They're looking for a sleep aid.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Carley, District 29. Thank you for a chance to re-comment on this. We heard some arguments about alcohol. Hey, let us use psychoactive compounds to replace alcohol. That's a straw man's argument. We don't need to be saying that's going to be replaced by something else that changes your mind. Instead, I was sorry to hear a number of those situations with that testifier, and I think probably some friends. They need some friends there. They need some church. They need some God in their life, or even ice cream or tea. But if they still want to resort to a psychoactive compound, no problem. Get a medical marijuana card and go get it.
Carley also wants to ban kratom. That's made from the leaves of the kratom tree, which is native to Southeast Asia. A committee sent Carley's bills to the Senate without recommendation, and the Senate declined to debate the legislation, effectively defeating it. Meanwhile, separate legislation to ban the sale of marijuana-like hemp-derived products to people younger than 21 is advancing through the legislature. Representatives delayed a public meeting earlier this week over seating arrangements for the House Committee on Education. As chair of the committee, Republican Representative Lana Greenfield of Doland gets to decide where committee members sit. Representative Phil Jensen, a Republican from Rapid City, and some others complained. An argument ensued that delayed the meeting for 15 minutes. Republican leaders pulled the members from the room to deal with the situation privately. Reaction from legislative leadership was unified. House Minority Leader Aaron Healy, a Democrat from Sioux Falls, spoke about the issue at a press conference earlier this week.
I also want to say it's only day 7, and we've already seen a lot of unprofessional and uncivil behavior.
Searchlight reporter Mackenzie Huber asked Republican Representative Scott Odenbach of Spearfish, the House Majority Leader, if he was concerned about the timing of the back and forth.
Frankly, I'm kind of happy that it happened right up front, because we made it crystal clear
that we're going to run the House of Representatives to do the people's business this session, and anybody of whatever faction or party or side that tries to disrupt that, we'll deal with it.
Last year, it was later in the legislative session when leaders stripped Jensen of his vice chairmanship of the Education Committee. That was for his bill to defund a school district over its bathroom policy toward transgender students. House Republican Speaker John Hanson said Jensen's recent behavior was unprofessional and juvenile. Hanson moved Jensen off the Education and Transportation Committees and reassigned him to the Local Government and Taxation Committees. Jensen told Searchlight that Republican leaders have, quote, declared war on conservatives, end quote. He alleged that Greenfield, the Education Committee chair, had ordered committee members to stop talking to each other and also forbade them from using their phones to communicate about how they're voting on bills. I'll be back with more news after this break.
This is Seth Tupper, editor of South Dakota Searchlight. We launched Searchlight in 2022. We shine a light on the most pressing issues in the Mount Rushmore state, focusing on state policy and politics. Our reach goes from East River to West River, with journalists in Sioux Falls, Pierre, and Rapid City. You can subscribe to our work by going to southdakotasearchlight.com/subscribe.
Last week, a state senator introduced a bill based on reporting from South Dakota Searchlight's Joshua Heyer. Last month, he reported that Steve Westra, a former commissioner of state economic development, approved the first piece of state aid that would ultimately grow to $69 million for C.J. Schwann's. A year after he left state government, Westra took a job with the company. C.J. Schwann's is using that state aid to help build a $550 million food processing plant in North Sioux Falls. Republican Senator Tim Reed's bill would require people who work for the state to wait 2 years before taking a job with a company that did business with the state if a contract is worth more than $1 million.
Senator Reed, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I bring before you today Senate Bill 93. And I want to begin by being very clear about what this bill is not about. This bill is not about the C.J. Schwann Economic Development Project, and it is not intended to slow, discourage, or second-guess economic development efforts in South Dakota. I support the C.J. Schwann project and believe it will be good for South Dakota's economy. I also want to state plainly that Steve Westra followed current law. I'm sure you've all seen the articles. He followed current law. His action complied with the statute as it exists today and is not part of this discussion. This bill does not allege wrongdoing by any individual. The rationale is straightforward. Large state contracts often involve significant discretion, long-term impact, and substantial public investment. When an individual has direct responsibility or influence over the award of such a contract, a longer cooling-off period helps ensure that decisions are made solely in the public interest.
A Senate committee approved the bill with no opposition. It will be discussed on the Senate floor next week. At a press conference, South Dakota Governor Larry Rhoden announced a bill that would increase the punishment for preventing someone from worshiping by threat or violence.
If someone decides to target a house of worship, there will be real consequences. It's already a misdemeanor to disrupt religious worship in South Dakota. This bill will make it a felony. We will continue to be a state that doesn't just talk about freedom. We take action when freedom is threatened.
He introduced it just days after demonstrators protesting against U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement interrupted a church service in St. Paul. A pastor of the church works for ICE, which had thousands of agents in Minnesota conducting enforcement actions for weeks, stirring controversy with events including the fatal shooting of an unarmed 37-year-old woman, Renee Good. The U.S. Department of Justice has opened a civil rights investigation into the St. Paul incident, and several people were arrested. There are federal laws against threats or violence that disrupt religious services.
Obviously, there's a lot of discussion at the federal level, to what extent there was laws broken. And so we're just going to make it very clear in South Dakota that it's not allowable in South Dakota. It rises to the extent of a felony.
Representative Scott Odenbach, a Republican from Spearfish, and Senator Jim Milhoff, a Republican from Pierre, are prime sponsors of the bill. They're the majority leaders of the House and Senate. Representative Spencer Gosch, a Republican from Glenham, wants to send a ballot measure to voters asking them to put eminent domain restrictions in the state constitution. Eminent domain is the power to take private property for public use with just compensation to the landowner. Supporters of the measure say a constitutional amendment is a stronger restriction compared to a state law adopted last year that bans eminent domain for carbon capture pipelines. Gosch introduced the bill in the House.
And what he would do then is simply revert the power of eminent domain authority to the government and public use only. And what we're doing is just trying to revert it back to the way it was supposed to be.
The text of the measure would ban eminent domain for any project by a non-governmental entity carried out solely to promote economic development or increase tax revenue without a public use, purpose, or utility. People who oppose the measure say the current law is already doing its job. That includes Ryan Budmeyer, the CEO of the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
We believe that the current system works. We believe that the amendment is unnecessary and it sends the wrong message that we are not open for opportunity. At this point in time, we need to be looking at ways to grow our economy and not ways to stop providing opportunity for the next generation.
The bill passed through a House committee on a 10-3 vote. And if the House and Senate pass the measure, it will go to voters in November.
At a time when the federal government is making drastic changes to public policy and pushing so many programs back to the states, it's hard to know what it all means for you, your family, and your community. Our Evening Wrap newsletter from State's Newsroom keeps you up to date on what your elected officials are doing or not doing to manage the fallout. You can sign up by going to statesnewsroom.com/subscribe.
Lastly, in the Black Hills, a hydroelectric plant could become a place where visitors learn about the history of gold mining in Lawrence County. It's located in Spearfish Canyon near the Devil's Bathtub hiking trail. Right now, the state's Game, Fish, and Parks Department owns the building, but the department's deputy secretary says the building doesn't align with the department's mission, which is to manage natural resources and recreation. If the proposed legislation passes, the state would hand the building over to the Spearfish Canyon Foundation at no cost. House Majority Leader Scott Odenbach, a Republican from Spearfish, says the building is well preserved, and the bill continues that preservation.
I went in that building a couple of years ago when we started talking about this, and it is like a time capsule. It's like they greased everything in 1916, and they just walked away. But basically, since 2014, since South Dakota Game and Fish got their hands on this property, it's just sitting there. Many of us who have gone past this building many times have, over the years, started to say we should do something with this building. We should do something better with this building. And so the plan here is, I think they've been talking to architects already, is to get this building back in shape, fix the roof, fix the windows, turn it into a museum that lets all the hundreds and thousands of people that are going up there go in there, learn about the history of Lawrence County, the history of mining in Lawrence County, and I think it would just be a beautiful addition to the attractions up there. And if you go and see it, it's definitely a building worth preserving.
Some opponents to the bill worry that the state is giving away taxpayer assets. But Odenbach says the land where the building sits isn't worth much, and upkeep on the building is costing the state money. A member of the Spearfish Canyon Foundation said the group will likely be able to seek grants and local support in lieu of state funding for any necessary renovations. That's all for this week. Searchlight Report is based on the reporting of South Dakota Searchlight's staff, editor Seth Tupper, senior reporter John Holt, and reporters Joshua Heyer, Mackenzie Huber, and me. I write the script and do the audio production for the show, with editing by Seth Tupper. Audio comes from recordings by South Dakota Searchlight and from legislative live streams provided by South Dakota Public Broadcasting. South Dakota Searchlight is part of State's Newsroom, the nation's largest nonprofit news organization. Until next time, I'm South Dakota Searchlight's Megan O'Brien with the Searchlight Report.